Morning everyone, and welcome back. Today is our second day in this event, which we hope it has been very enriching and empowering for you. Yesterday we've had a complete set of wonderful concurrent sessions, and I had the chance myself to attend to some of those. And I don't know about you, but I have this sense of a very positive view about bilingualism, which I don't know if it's going to be the same when we close today's event in the panel of experts and all those questions that you've got in relation to it. But on the other hand, we must feel very lucky to have with us a remarkable scholar who has contributed a lot to the national perspectives on bilingualism. At some point in our professional development, we've had the chance to read some of her books and all the published products that she has made and shaped our views and conceptions of bilingual education. Today's keynote speaker is Dr. Anne-Marie Truscott de Mejia. She's a PhD in linguistics in the area of bilingual education from Lancaster University and holds an MA in applied English linguistics from Birmingham University. She's currently working in the Faculty of Education at Universidad de los Andes in Bogotá, and is the director of the PhD program in education. Her research interests include bilingual classroom interaction, the construction of bilingual curricula, and processes of empowerment, and of course, bilingual teacher development. She's the author of a number of books in English and Spanish, which include Empowering Teachers Across Cultures with Christine Elot, and the book Bilingüismo en el Contexto Colombiano with Beatriz Peña Dix and Alexis López, Exploraciones sobre el aprendizaje de lenguas y contenidos en programas bilingües, and the book Empoderamiento, Autonomía y Pensamiento Crítico en las aulas de lenguas extranjeras with Beatriz Peña Dix and Nicole Bruskowitz. Every time that she visits us, the program learns something, and everything impacts the curriculum. And I guess today is no exception. We are extremely gratified of having her today and that she has accepted to join this event and be here with us today. It's my pleasure to present to you Anne-Marie Truscott.
Well, good morning everybody. I'm very, very happy to be here. And I noticed that since my last visit, the auditorium has changed much for the better. So I'm very pleased to note these changes. I would like to thank, first of all, very much Professor Enrique Arias, who is, as you know, the Director de la Licenciatura en Bilingüismo, very much for this invitation. I would also like to thank Profesora María Cristina Valderrama, who is the, as you know, the Director de Oficina de Relaciones Internacionales. And I would also like to thank los representantes de la Red de Lenguaje y Pedagogía de la Universidad Subcolombiana de Neiva y la Universidad de Nariño. It's very nice to see so many people from so many different universities at this event. When Enrique asked me to come and said that we were going to talk about the Licenciatura en Bilingüismo, I was very happy, again, for another reason, because in Colombia, as you probably know, there are many licenciaturas in English, in lenguas extranjeras, but there are only, in Bogotá, there are only two licenciaturas in bilingüismo. One in the Universidad del Bosque and one in Única. And I think there are a couple more, Enrique tells me, in the country. But really, out of all the licenciatura programs, you will be number 5, probably in the whole country. So I think that's a very important point. Okay, I've entitled my talk, Teaching in Bilingual Education Programs in Colombia in the 21st Century, Challenges and Future Directions. because really, although we are now here thinking about bilingualism, and we must also think about multilingualism, because now people are saying it's not enough to have 2 languages, you need more. So, and we're looking for the future. So how are we going to help students who are going to be teachers in the future to help their bilingual and multilingual students? Okay, so what I'm going to do today, I'm going to do an introduction, and then I'm going to contrast briefly a bilingual and a monolingual focus. It may seem obvious, but it's not always so. Then I'm going to talk about what people have found are basic competencies for bilingual teachers. So there have been studies carried out in Argentina, also in Bogotá, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then I'm going to talk about the native speaker. I think Professor Jaime also talked about it yesterday, but I'm going to talk about this in relation to problematizing this notion. And conclusions and future directions. Okay, so I'm going to start, as Professor Lenore did yesterday, with a question. You don't have to answer it directly, but just think about it. Is teaching English the same as teaching bilingually? I'm often asked that question. I'm an English teacher, I'm a bilingual teacher. Are you? I would say, I mean, you can answer as you like, but I would say that teaching English or teaching French or teaching Portuguese or whatever language is part of bilingualism, but it's not everything. So that's one way to put it. Yeah, if you read El Tiempo, I don't work for El Tiempo, but if you read El Tiempo, there are sometimes advertisements for people to teach in bilingual programs. And I've got a few for you here. So these teachers should be perfectly bilingual. What's that mean? Are you perfectly bilingual? Am I perfectly bilingual? What does that mean? Fully bilingual, again. Or, even worse, rigorously bilingual. So, again, what do we mean by these terms? And then we have something else which gives us a clue. A complete dominance of the English language. Again, I ask you, is this bilingual? So, I'm just going to talk very briefly about what Jim Cummins says. Jim Cummins, as you know, is a researcher who works in Noisy in Canada, but he's originally from Ireland. And he's worked extensively on bilingualism, and particularly the relationship between 2 languages. So he talks about the monolingual principle in EFL, and he says that typically EFL, ELT, has been characterized by monolingualism. This often is a result of the direct method. I don't know if any of you remember or know about the direct method, where the first language, in your case Spanish, is excluded from the classroom. Okay? However, he says, and this is what Cummins says, it is assumed that instruction should be carried out as far as possible exclusively in the target language, English, French, or whatever, without recourse to the student's first language. And he calls this the 2 solitudes. So you have, think of somebody in solitary confinement, somebody from here and somebody there, and no connection. So this is what he says, this is his criticism. However, he says, this is only half the equation. Learning, and this is always something that I tell my students, learning another language implies being on the road to bilingualism. So we are all on the road to bilingualism. Depends how we define it, but we are all there. We are all along this road, going along. It doesn't, if you only have the target language, English or French or or Portuguese, this does not allow students to make explicit use of what they know. They know Spanish. They may not know how to analyze it, but they know how to use it. If they can be helped to use it to support, to make a bridge between what they know and the new learning, that is very important. And Cummins says it ignores important research carried out on bilingualism. And he has a lot of research, and he and other people, to show that it's important, it's very important to develop the first language, the second language, and if we're talking about multilingualism, the third language or fourth. So he says this: when we free ourselves, this is a type of liberation, when we free ourselves from exclusive reliance on monolingual instructional approaches, wide variety of opportunities arise for teaching bilingual students by means of bilingual instructional strategies that acknowledge the reality of and strongly promote cross-language transfer. So notice two things very important, or three things. Bilingual students, as we say, we're all on the road to bilingualism. The instructional strategies promoting cross-language transfer. So people often tell me, okay, from Spanish to English. But Cummins says yes, but also from English to Spanish. And Carlos Rico in Universidad Javeriana in Bogotá did a study a while ago where he showed that the reading strategies that students developed in English in reading helped them with their Spanish reading. So it's two-way. It's not automatic. You need to have the appropriate sociolinguistic or educational context to support this idea of transfer. What can we transfer? Well, we can transfer linguistic items, especially people often begin with cognates, and I always give my favorite cognate. If you say in English, embarrassing, this is very embarrassing, and you translate it into Spanish, embarazada. It's not exactly a good transfer, so you have to be careful how you transfer. We can transfer concepts, so concept knowledge, metacognitive, metalinguistic items, again, I'm going to talk more about that now, and phonological awareness, so lots of things that we already can help our students to do. Now, in Argentina, in 2008, there was a project carried out by Cristina Banfi and Silvia Reccaroli, and they were looking at what are the important aspects of knowledge that a teacher in a bilingual program needs to have. So, obviously the languages, the cultures involved in the program, and I'm going to say a bit more about that in relation to intercultural approach, content to be taught, pedagogical knowledge, and they say bilingualism and bilingual education. Because they found in their study in Argentina that there was very little on the students. Teachers didn't know much about how bilingual students learn. So let's just look at some of these in a little bit more detail. The competence of the teaching staff. Teachers, they say, should have a high level of language they will teach in and some knowledge of the other language. So think of the new licenciatura requirements by the ministry. C1, that's quite high. But if we are language teachers, we need that level. And another thing that I think is very important, teachers as bilingual models. You, in your classrooms, are models to your students of bilingual speakers. They may not relate so much perhaps to me in relation to English, but to you because you have developed your competences here, you are part of Pereira, part of Colombia, and you are a model in many ways, not only for bilingual states, but in many other ways. So I think that's a very important aspect that sometimes we don't pay enough attention to. And as I said before, metalinguistic awareness. When I started teaching many, many years ago, I was asked to do drills. So you had to repeat, you know, the past tense versus the present perfect, and you repeated the drill. This repetition, this pattern practice is not enough. We need to help our students to be conscious of how they learn and why this is, perhaps they are extending their hypotheses too much, but we need to help them become conscious of their own learning process and in metalinguistic awareness. The cultural dimension, and I was at a very interesting session yesterday to do with postscript, and I was very interested to hear that this has been evolved in relation to intercultural, the intercultural dimension. So I think it's very important that we're not only talking about languages in bilingualism, we're all talking about cultural implications, intercultural contact, and perhaps very important at this stage in Colombia, we should help our students to recognize and understand difference and diversity. It's a very easy thing to say. We say, oh yes, you know, you're different, but how is it really to understand? And I remember in Cali, when I first came, this is something that has been documented in other places. Being from England, and I had travelled in Europe but not in South America, and I found that people got very close. And I was always going backwards because you are closer. Now I'm quite happy when people come up, but that for me was an intercultural difficulty at the beginning, the proximity. Okay, and the possibility of integration and the collaboration of different teachers and material design. I'm going to say a little bit more about that in a minute. They also found in Argentina that it was important for students to know about, not only, or teachers to know about, societal bilingualism, so how, for example, in Colombia, there are the different areas of the country and different languages and cultures, characteristic of these, and also, obviously, from an individual perspective, how people become bilinguals. So you've got bilingual language learning, intercultural communication, and bilingual methodologies. Now, sometimes, the Professor Nora said yesterday that the biggest challenge that she had found was to find bilingual high school teachers expert in their area. And that's something that characterizes many schools, many universities. How do we find people who are high-level bilinguals, but are also experts in science or maths or whatever? And they say, well, it's really difficult, because how can we get somebody to teach maths or science through English? And I say, well, there's another alternative. That's not the only way. You can have a bilingual methodology. I'm going to show you today, very quickly, two. You may have heard of this. This is a methodology which was created in the United States, I think in the 80s, 70s, 80s. And if you're interested in finding out more, Freeman and Freeman have written on that, but there's a lot of information on the web. And this is interesting because it's a bilingual methodology, but it doesn't involve code switching or translanguaging. So, very briefly, what you have are the three stages. So you have preview, and you do the preview in the first language, usually. So, if you're going to do photosynthesis, you say to the class, okay, ustedes conocen algo de cómo las plantas manejan. Okay, so in Spanish, you try to connect this with what the students know. So it's prior knowledge. So they know something about plants, and sunlight and things. So you start with that. Then you do the view, which is the most extensive part, in the target language. So you do all the activities, that you normally do in English there, but taking into account what the students have known from before. And then you can review either in the first language, if you want to find out how much your students have understood, or in the target language, if you want to find out if they remember the names of the areas that you talked about. What's very important to notice, is that the teacher doesn't repeat. Sometimes people say, oh, you say it in Spanish and then you say it in English. You say it in English and then you say it in Spanish. No, that's contrary to any sort of pedagogical principle. What you need to do is you rely on what's been said in Spanish, for example, in the first phase, and then you make connections with what you're doing in the English phase. So it's a bilingual methodology, but no code switching, as I said. It keeps languages apart, but together in the framework. And it's flexible. It doesn't have to be first Spanish and then in English it can be changed. So that's one possibility. And there were two studies I'm just going to cite very briefly. One quite a long time ago, carried out in Cali by Gabriel Marulanda, and he did it in primary school with 4th and 5th grade students. And he found it was a very good method, not for the best students. The best students could understand everything in English, but there were many students who had difficulty understanding what was going on in maths. And he found that the parents were much more involved in the children's learning. And that was important because, I don't know in your cases, but very often parents are very, very concerned that their children are doing well in maths and science and the important subjects. So if the parents can understand what's happening because they are using Spanish as well as English, then that's very important. Students understood, which was obviously the most important thing. And this is what someone said. A mí me pareció porque primero lo hicimos en español. Esto me dio una idea de lo que íbamos a hacer en inglés. So this child was able to connect. Okay, she had an idea and then she was able to connect. And then the other one said, porque con el español ya tenía más alternativas para comprender el inglés. That was a long time ago, but recently a student in Universidad de los Andes did her master's thesis on the same methodology to primary school children again, from 6 to 7 years old in a private school. And she had a quantitative study. She compared, she had a control group, she had an experimental group, and she found that, according to her statistical analysis, that it had a very statistically positive impact on student performance relating to the notion of subtraction. Remember, these are primary school children. And this is what she said. All children in the preview, view, review group achieved high scores in vocabulary development in English and in the use of expressions commonly used in this area, as well as a good understanding of the mathematical concept taught. Now the other one I'm just going to do it very briefly because I haven't got too much time. I'm going to talk about team teaching. Again, team teaching is not related to bilingual teaching, but it can be used. And this is something that was done in a school in Cali in the area of science. And again, it's one way of being working the content teacher working with the English teacher. So in the first stage in this particular area, the English teacher started by establishing the problem and the bibliographical consultation. Then in the center of the class, the Spanish teacher, the Spanish science teacher, established the knowledge and personal conclusions, formulation of hypotheses, and experimental design. So he did those two, and then the English teacher finished off because they had to write reports of conclusions in English. So this was something that was able to, the two teachers worked together as a team teaching. And what's the advantages of this? Well, you've got both the language and the content areas, the academic processes, are seen as parallel. So it's not just one here and then the other there. They're seen as ongoing. And there's no danger of one being subordinated to another, because you have different teachers. And obviously, these teachers are very concerned that their area is represented. So that's important too. There is a possibility of harmonious integration. It may not happen. Depends very much on the personalities of the teachers. And if you know teachers, very often they say, no, I'm the English teacher. I teach English. I'm the maths teacher. So this is their domain. But if we can get teachers to think, okay, how can I work with the other teacher harmoniously? That's a big step forward, I would say. You need time and space to plan. You can't just do it in the corridor. You need a special set of circumstances. And as I said, you need to be open and tolerant towards different teachers. And that can be quite difficult, but can be quite rewarding. Right, this study then, again, I'm going to talk about very briefly. This is a study which is being completed now. It's a student of mine in the Maestría in Unidades, in Maestría en Educación, and he was working on a program. He was researching a program in UNICA, which is the university associated with the Colombo Americano, and he was looking at the initial teacher training program in the Colombo, and he wanted to find out the teaching competences which characterize an initial English-Spanish teacher training program. So you'll find that I'm not going to spend too long on it, but he found very similar things to the Argentinian study. So who participated? Well, various people, the rectora, and that's very important when you do a study. You need to involve the head of the program or whoever, because otherwise you can have difficulties actually doing the study. So the rectora in UNICA was very agreeable. She said, we are very interested in this study, we want to know what you found. The program director, teachers and students. And he did a case study. He just used one case, the case of this program. He did semi-structured interviews, focus groups, document analysis, and something which may be quite new to you, it was new to me until recently, pedagogical and social cartography. And if you're interested in that, I can talk a little bit more about it later, but that's something that has had a great impact in many of the studies that have been carried out by students in the Maestría in Bogotá. Okay, so what did he find? As I said, very similar to what we've said in Argentina. These are important: pedagogical competences, linguistic competences, language and academic and intercultural competences. So I'll just quickly take you through a couple of things to do with these. And this is, do you remember I was talking about metacognitive strategies? So he found that in the program, and from all the information he got from these different sources, that the students were expected to learn and teach metacognitive strategies to encourage autonomy and collaborative bilingual learning. So notice the metacognitive strategies are not an end in themselves, they are hard to encourage autonomy. And research dynamics relating to bilingual teaching and learning. That's something that when I started working in Colombia many years ago, there was very little research on bilingualism. Now there's much, much more. And therefore you in this program, or people who work in this program, will be able to contribute to the research on bilingual teaching and learning in Colombia. This specifically in Pereira. Okay, right, as we said before, this is something that repeats what we've said, that the linguistic competence in both languages, the L1 supports the L2, it's a bridge. Also, as I said before, Camille says we can use it the other way, from L2 to L1. And the potential bilingual teachers are able to generate bilingual strategies which generate the learning of academic content. So that's, again, as we've looked at in the bilingual methodologies, there are strategies which can help our students to learn math, science, social science through English or through French. Good. The intercultural competence, again, we're going back to the intercultural aspect, is the potential bilingual teacher is able to generate linguistic strategies which articulate the linguistic and cultural diversity of the students. And something which is very interesting, I think, I haven't heard before, is that the teachers are encouraged to explore course content from different cultural perspectives. So I leave you the question, if you're teaching maths, how do you explore maths from different cultural perspectives? I don't know, but that's a good question. Okay, now there are some bilingual learning strategies, although very often they're not referred to very openly. And in the LUD, which is the language centre of the Universidad Distrital, a researcher, Ana Milena Góngora, asked the students what sort of strategies they used. They came up with a whole lot of strategies, but these are some of the bilingual strategies that they found. So, the student said, well, I make associations between new information and my previous knowledge, so very good. Definitely a bilingual strategy. I look for similarities and differences between English and Spanish. That, in the past, was called contrastive analysis. But it's still a good method to look at and see, well, look at the context, do they work? Look at the way that Spanish uses the verb tenses in English. So you can learn from this contrastive analysis. Transfer, I'm careful to transfer words or concepts directly from Spanish to English. And this is another one which is very important. If I'm talking and I don't know the correct expression, I use signs or I change momentarily to Spanish. So this is the famous code switching or translanguaging. Okay, but the paralinguistic, the signs, are something which I have always often used in my conversations and my communications when you don't know the word or you get into a communication difficulty, and then the paralinguistics function quite well. Well, this one, the last one, I prepare for every task, take into account the type of activity, the previous knowledge, and my current language skills. Obviously, a very dedicated student. But the question arises, these are what the students say they do. How can we, as teachers, help our students to become conscious of these strategies and others, and how to use them? As Professor Enrique said yesterday, this involves using L1 knowledge as support, and his team are doing it, as you know, with the preschool, the early education, no, not preschool, the early initial education. Okay, so let's start summing up. How do we help students becoming more active in their path towards bilingualism? Well, there are three main ideas, I think, and this is repeating a little bit what I've been saying. Help them to activate their prior knowledge, particularly their knowledge of how their first language works. They may be bilingual already. In that case, help them to be conscious of how their two languages work when they're learning another language. Facilitate the process of active transfer between students' languages. That's one condition that Cummins says is necessary. We have to not just say, okay, transfer, we have to say, okay, what can you see? So we have to act as a scaffolding process between how they're looking at their first language, how they're analysing their first language, and how they're going to be able to transfer that to the target language. Again, the idea of conscientization, remember Pereira said that was very important, help the students to become conscious of how they learn and other effective strategies. Now, just before I end, I'm going to talk about this idea of native speakers. Now, I don't know, probably Jaime talked about this yesterday, I'm not sure, I was there, but for many years, native speakers were seen as the top notch. So if you had a bilingual program, you would invite somebody from the States, from Canada, from Britain. Okay, they're the best. Very often these teachers were monolingual, they didn't speak Spanish. When I came to Colombia, I spoke very, very little Spanish. But I was in the Colombo Británico in Cali, I started there, and I remember people, I felt very bad because as a native speaker I had a higher salary than my colleagues who were teaching English. So those sort of things don't make you very popular, but the rest could be teachers. This was in the 70s and 80s and 90s, native speakers, and I was told the students, we are all native speakers. You're native speakers for Spanish or other languages. So it's not only English native speakers. But who counts as a native speaker? Maybe that I speak English, but maybe my English hasn't been developed academically. Am I a good model as a native speaker? So it's not just that you speak the language. Okay, in fact, David Graddle, who's written a very good book, which I don't know if you know, called English Next. You can download it on the internet, it's free. And he talks about the native speaker problem. Native speakers are not top-notch, they're a problem. Why? They're irrelevant. Because very often native speakers, the accent that native speakers have, may be too remote. And this has happened. People say, yes, I don't quite understand what you're saying because my teacher speaks differently. Okay, so there can be a difficulty of accent, but more importantly, few native speakers belong to the community of practice which is developing among lingua franca users. So there are studies that have shown that most people who use English in communication are non-native speakers. A Japanese person, a German, doing trade or whatever, and this is often the case. Right, and in fact, David Graddle said, fluent bilingual teachers are increasingly valid because of their experience in bilingual education. So it's not a monolingual native speaker, it's a fluent bilingual teacher. And then I'm going to just give you something that is one of my favorite quotations from Ofelia Garcia, and it applies to all teachers, not just bilingual teachers. And I think this is a wake-up call for us in general. And she said, she works in bilingual education in CUNY, in the United States. She says, the teacher must stop being an instructor, accepting of orders, of curriculum plan, of material given, and must claim her role as educator, empowering the community she teaches by providing it with the appropriate knowledge and resources it needs. Only then will teachers feel empowered to transform practices that can, little by little, step by step, impact on social goals. So why is that important? We are not instructors, we are educators. We are not transmitting knowledge, we are constructing knowledge with our students, however you interpret that. We must take an active role in design, in planning, in materials development, And we must be empowered. Now, I often talk about empowerment, and people say, well, how can I be empowered? You have to do it yourself. There's no easy way. But we can facilitate other people's empowerment. We can help people, we can give them the confidence, we can help them to see that their role is important. I'm sure Professor Jaime has talked about in policy development. Teachers are very important. Teachers in their classrooms. They can say, okay, the ministry says this, I'm going to do that. And you are a policy enactor at that moment. So then our responsibility is not only to our students, but to society. How can we transform society? And I was having a very interesting conversation last night, and we were talking about that really as teachers, and as teachers yourselves, or future teachers, it is one way in which we can really try to change, to transform society. It doesn't transform like that. But sometimes, and it's really strange, people come up to me years after they've been in a class and they say, do you remember when you said this? And I can't remember at all, so I say, oh yes, but I don't remember. And they said, that really made me think, and this and this. So we don't often know the impact we have on our students, but we can transform the world. And that is something that few professions can do literally. So we are not instructors, we are educators. So, I'm going to sum up. Conclusions and ways forward. Okay, again. Importance of incorporating a bilingual perspective into teaching, learning, and evaluation of languages. This is another thing that people say, okay, teaching and learning is fine. But what about evaluating? What do I evaluate? Do I evaluate content in Spanish? Do I evaluate English? What do I evaluate? And again, we haven't talked much about this, but I think it's very important. The value of incorporating a principled, strategic use of code switching or translanguaging into the bilingual classroom. Notice I say principled or strategic. Some people say, oh well, if they don't understand, I'm going to code switch. No, that's a recipe for disaster. We need to know why we can, what are we going to do it when the students really don't understand? Are we going to do it when we want them to produce in Spanish to see if they understand? So what are the principles? What are the strategies we're going to use for bilingual classrooms? Emphasis on the teacher's role was created in Novator in his or her institution. Obviously, this is not only for bilingual teachers, promoting different ways of teaching and learning, taking into account students' differing learning styles and linguistic repertoires. Remember, the idea of linguistic repertoire is very important. And this is something that perhaps in the past has not been paid attention to enough. But we have linguistic repertoires. We can add to them. We're not just thinking of languages as compartmentalized. We have all these resources. We also have, as you know, different ways of speaking, for example, different varieties in Colombia. If you go to the coast, if you go to Nariño, if you go to Bogotá, people speak Spanish differently. And somebody was playing in Armenia the other day a very interesting video. I can't remember the name of it, but it was two young fellows from Bogotá with, I don't know if you know that, yes? Okay, and they are talking about the difficulty of learning Spanish, and they're using all these different words from all over Latin America. It's very, very good, so I don't know if you're interested, somebody over here knows what they're called, but I thought it was very, very interesting. Help people, teachers to recognize their potential as agents of change and bilingual models. Remember, that is something that's very important. The role of teachers, educators in helping teachers to understand complex, bi- and multilingual realities in their classroom. I think the more we can make it more complicated in the sense of understandings or complex, think that is good. Not that our teaching should be more complicated, but that our understanding of the complexities. And the idea of reflecting on their own language learning experiences. We've all learned languages. So how does that help us to recognize our attitudes towards different languages? How do we feel about Nasayuwe? How do we feel about Creole? And also, something which is important as well, to recognize our insecurities about the position of native speakers as opposed to high-level bilingual or multilingual professionals. I have had experience of that because I was asked to teach some years ago, and I'm still doing it, a course on redacción en español. And I said, you want me to talk about redacción en español? And so my first class I went, and I thought I could see the students looking at me saying, you know, what's she doing here? You know, well, they didn't say it, they were very polite, but I could feel it. And then, so I felt very insecure. Luckily, the course went well, and you know, and I've continued teaching it. But you can feel very insecure in those sort of circumstances. So I just wanted to share that experience and to leave you with this you may have seen before, but I think it's a very good representation of a bilingual person. Noticing the brain, the psycholinguistics, the neurolinguistics, they are, you can see the different colours to show the interactions in the brain, and also input and output in different languages. So the bilingual person has all this going on. It's not just, you know, English and Spanish here or whatever. This is the complexity of all of us as bilingual speakers and learners. So, thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Dr. Emery, thank you so much for this information and all your knowledge. I think from since we started yesterday, we've been discussing of so many terms. Well, one of them was obviously bilingualism, but so far we have evolved into new concepts like critical, intercultural competences, awareness, analysis. We have also talked a little bit about teacher agency, and now we have migrated into the concept of multilingualism. So these concepts will construct what's going to be today, noontime, the panel of experts, which will be the compilation of all the questions you've got in relation to it, and then we're going to have a pretty nice conversation about it. So for the meantime, I'd like you please to write your questions. You will be delivered by the staff members of the event. Some slips of paper in which you can write the questions specifically for Anne-Marie. And we'd also like to welcome the delegation of Universidad de la Amazonía who just arrived, and I guess you had a very, very long trip to come here. So we're just going to give you some time to register and have all the information about it. Let me clarify that all the presentations will be developed in this building, so you don't have to move across the university. You just go from the 6th floor to the 1st floor. And now we're going to open the moment to go to the conference sessions, which will be developed until 11 a.m. At 11, we're going to be back here. We're going to have the final panel of experts to close the event. Thank you so much, and let's write the questions and move to the conference sessions.
Bueno,